First will be the facility plan by Mr. Mark Linehan, our superintendent. Next will be John Carlson, who is with Carlson West Pavandra Architects. And then it will be Jay Spearman from Emeritus. And we'll go in that order, and then we'll be making some moves, and I'll be giving some directives for the communication from the public.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Linster. Good evening. Thank you for coming and working through the weather. Students, sorry, I think we'll be fine and we'll start on time tomorrow, so don't get your hopes up. Probably a later night for me anyway, so I won't have time to make that decision, but hopefully the snow will clear off and we'll keep plugging away with school. I do appreciate everyone coming. Basically tonight what we want to do is present information to you. I've asked John Carlson, our architect from Carlson Pavandra Architects, and Jay Spearman from Emeritus to provide information also. And really, our hope is that maybe a lot of questions are answered, some basic information, and just give you an idea of what we're looking at and why. And so we're going to go through our presentations. I don't want to rush through. But I don't want to go to, I don't want to take up all your time. So hold your questions, and again, as Dr. Linster mentioned, there will be time for you to speak to the board if you wish. Also, you have my email address and school phone number. You can always email or give me a call if questions weren't answered tonight and you'd like some clarification or answers along those lines. Certainly feel free to communicate with me at any time. So I'll just go ahead and start, and we'll see how we go. I kind of laid out the purpose of why we're here. Basically, what we're going to do is just take a quick look back at facilities. We're going to talk about our 2012 upgrades. That's going to be pretty brief. And what we've done since 2012. I'll probably spend a pretty good amount of time on our current facilities and I guess why we came to this concept that we're looking at, and then we'll have John come up and show you the drawings and talk through those. Jay will come up and talk a little bit about the scope of the project and the levy implications and so forth, and then there will be time for public comment. We also will do tours of the facilities after. Our administrators will help with that too, depending on how many people want to tour. We'll break up into maybe smaller groups. It just depends on how many want to go through the facilities. That shouldn't take too long, but we do want to walk you through some of the areas if you'd like. And that's available at any time. If you ever want to come, you got to go home tonight, whatever, you want to see the facilities, feel free to let me know and we'll set something up. First of all, we're going to look back to 2009. And basically, that year, we conducted a facility audit of our facilities. And that's when we had the old elementary school. We were a K4, 5-8, 9-12 configuration. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's kind of rehashing things, but it does put some things into perspective a little bit. We did have at the old elementary school several infrastructure issues that we looked at. There was electrical issues. Our ADA was not great as far as compliance goes. We had leaky roofs and foundations and fire code issues. We actually were having one of our classes in a closet, literally. It was our language learner class. It was a smaller group of kids. And when the fire marshal came, we tried to just either not go down that hallway or ask the teacher not to be there that day or something because we didn't want them to see that. Obviously, that's something that you cannot do. We didn't have space for additional rooms. We did look at some expansion, but there really wasn't a lot of area to go. Our library was small. There was no sufficient area for any type of computer lab expansion. We did have computers in that library. Our PE was in the cafeteria. Our kitchen area was unsafe really for our workers and not a good place for them to prep. They prep about 1,000 lunches a day. And the area they were using was really no bigger probably than a classroom. And so we had a lot of issues there. And really, the cost, is, you can't really see that on the bottom, but the infrastructure cost just to get back to where we wanted to be as far as code was anywhere from $1.5 million to $2 million. And the board, we all decided that putting a $2 million Band-Aid on a building that we really haven't even done anything with expansion yet, probably didn't make sense. So that's the old elementary. The old middle school, which is our current elementary, which has been named everything, I think. At one time, I understand it was the school that everybody went to. We were not using that space very efficiently. If you were in there, it had a first floor where we were doing our family consumer science, art, industrial tech. The teachers were using that 1 or 2 periods a day, and that was pretty much it. And so from that point on during the day, other than maybe occasional use, it was not being used a whole lot. We really weren't doing a true, we were kind of a split school over there. 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th were operating as a junior high. There's a lot of sharing of staff. I think it was 9 or 10 people that were going back and forth because they were teaching the junior high classes coming here. Some of them were going back and forth all day. It really wasn't very efficient. However, the remodeling was nice, and you know, I know that's something that occurred quite a while ago, but you know, that certainly made the building usable. The high school in 09, locker room's still an issue. We did upgrade a little bit with HVAC. It's kind of where the new HVAC in the gym burps to the locker rooms and the air goes out. That's how it burps, I think, is how it was described to me. So we had some ADA issues. Our gym and lecture hall, at that time, there was really no heat to speak of in here. Certainly, it was very minimal. No air conditioning. We have done some improvements in the lecture hall. We added some stage lighting and the sound system. Those are things that if we were to move, we would bring with us because those are good upgrades. This is one of the better sound systems that we have in the area in our facility. So we did do that, and also the gym, we upgraded the HVAC project. We paid for about a little more than half of that with building fund. We did take out a 3-year lease on the HVAC upgrades, and we're finished paying that off next year. So it's just a 3-year short-term lease, very, very low interest rates. And the building, you notice the pipes here, that this entire building was not sprinkled at that time. So we moved forward with our 2012 additions. That's the elementary school now. We added the 3 classrooms where it says Wayne Elementary School to house first grade. Kindergarten took over the old fax room and the art room and the shop area. They have some nice rooms now there. And we basically did these additions with Build America bonds. We did not do a referendum vote for the funding. And so those are limited in the amount that we could draw. It was based on 5.2 cents of our levy. And so we were able to draw about $4.1 million. And the district also funded some of that project as well. I just want to make sure in my notes I'm catching everything. When we planned that building, we had a community group that helped us with that facility change. One of the things we began talking about even then was what's next, because bringing our junior high over, it did make it for a much nicer situation for the students and the teachers. The traveling was cut down. We still have about 3 staff that travel back and forth. There's just less. We have 1 art room now that we use for the 712, 1 FCS room. Those types of things made it much more efficient for us to use those facilities. So there's not as much traveling around right now. And so but the community committee really looked at it and said, okay, we're finished. Now what's going to be next down the road? And so a lot of what we're talking about tonight really started back then. At the junior senior high, the building we're in, we added classrooms for junior high. That's the upper level. There's 4 classrooms down the left side of that hallway, 1 on the right, and then up more toward the middle on the right is our media center that is now a 712 media center. We took our old media center and converted that into classrooms. In the basement, we have a science lab. We have a vocal music room that's used for 712. and we have a family consumer science room that's used for 7-12. And then we also put a cooking kitchen in that was much more up to date and modern, and really has helped us with, with all the changes in the lunch program and all the requirements now. Certainly having the facility we have makes it much better for everybody. So that was certainly something that was good for us. Last year we started our early learning center. We are leasing that property. We have a 3-year lease in the Sunnyview Business Park. And we also received a grant from the Department of Education. It's a 3-year grant. Last year it totaled $145,000. The next 2 years it will be $120,000. The $25,000 was for startup. We were able to use that just to purchase furniture and curriculum and those types of things that we needed for the preschool program. So that is over in that Sunnyview area. It's a nice building. It's working out well for us. And the program's off to a good start. So we got settled into our facilities. And identified, as we did our planning, we identified these 3 areas as areas that we would want to continue to look at. A preschool and a kindergarten facility, and I'll talk about each of these in a minute. A junior, senior high physical education athletic facility, and the lecture hall, which is the facility we're in now, and a performing arts theater. So from the audit, we talked about some shortcomings of all of those facilities. The preschool, as I mentioned, is off campus. It can be a positive, but overall, I think it's better that it's nearer to us. We transport our lunches there. We have staff that transport back and forth. They're a little bit isolated out there. We have 1 teacher and 2 paras and an administrator that work out there. And so they're just a little bit isolated away from the district. So it would be preferred. It's been good to get us started with the program, but to have a facility here. The cost of the lease is another shortcoming. It's a typical lease that, it's something that we agreed to and we have to pay, but we're leasing, we're renting. It's not something that we own. And so that is a 3-year lease, and the grant is helping a little bit, defraying some of that cost. But our grant runs through. We have 2 more years after this year. The elementary school, we really, generally speaking, the general ed classrooms are good. Nice rooms, remodeled. The physical education space is very good, especially for an elementary school. Kitchen commons sufficient. We have a good band music room. And our technology space is much more improved. We have 2 labs up by our library, along with some mobile labs. We're short on small group meeting spaces. There's no conference room. There's not places for necessarily to have smaller meetings. Anytime you go over to the elementary during the day, you will see paras or teachers working with students out in the hallway, just because there's not a lot of space for that activity to take place. So we're a little bit short. We did do some retrofitting of rooms. We took a few of the larger rooms and built a wall so we could have rooms in 2, and that's worked out pretty good for that. But we are near capacity is what I would say. Basically, we have about 460 plus students over there. There's 3 sections, and so we have classrooms sufficient for all 7 grades with 3 sections. If we ever need to add a classroom, I think we probably would have to retrofit a few of those larger rooms. To add any classroom. So if we have a class that comes in that we need a 4th section, we're going to have to do a little work on that. The junior, senior high, you're in the lecture hall. Obviously, there's some modernization that needs to happen. That's something that we know. Access is poor, especially for the stage. We do have a lift back in the corner. But it's not an up-to-date type of thing. It works and it does fine. But our stage really is, access-wise, is not good. It's difficult. We really don't have our concerts in here. We do those in the gym. We cannot fit the crowds in here. This seats about 380 people, and that would be every seat full. And so we have those concerts over in the gyms, over in the high school gym. There's really nowhere to expand the stage, which is something we talked about. Is it possible to expand this stage so it's more of a performance stage, and really there's nowhere to go. It's good for lectures, it's good for, we have staff meetings in here. We had a guest speaker talk to our staff in here. We had that person talk over in the gym because we wouldn't have fit all our 712 kids in here. So we really aren't able to use this as much as we would like, especially for concerts and plays. And hopefully a lot of you come to those things and you know what I'm talking about. The other issue when we have a concert is a lot of the transportation and equipment has to take place from the band room, either up the stairs, or some of it goes over to the elevator and up and then back over. So it's a little bit of a extra work to do that, which our teachers have been great, and they've always been willing to do whatever they need to. The gym, the main area is nice. We have a nice gym. We've done some nice improvements to the gym. We added HVAC. Travis's crew painted one summer, did a great job. It looks nice. The bleachers are about 10 or 12 years old. So there's good facility there. However, the support areas are not as good. We'll talk a little bit about locker rooms here in a minute. Our concession area is kind of it's just a closet off that hallway, and our public restrooms are quite a ways down that other hallway. There's really no gathering space either. You know, there's no place. You go to a lot of their gyms, and their concession area is also a place where people can gather, and that we don't have. Our wrestling room is by our shop. Our weight room's outside the building in a mod. There's no water, there's no restrooms to that area. And we also share that space with junior high and senior high PE. And that is a juggling act for the teachers. There's 2 PE teachers here, they have the weight room too that they can use, and there's also a classroom that they use for health. But it is a scheduling issue that we have to deal with quite a bit. We have early, late practices. Typically on a non-game night, there will be teams here, after school, and then again at night, the girls might be after school, the guys come back after night. Quite a few morning practices. Usually our dance team is in there in the mornings. Today our basketball team was in there. So again, there's access-wise, we just have to think about that. Our locker rooms, if you get a chance to go through those, you'll see they really are subpar. There's not a whole lot. Part of our project that we didn't take, an alternate bid, was to renovate those locker rooms, and it was going to be about $800,000. And we just felt that that was not money well spent to renovate, just to have lockers that have showers and those types of things. So we didn't do that. Concerts, we have those in the gym. I think it probably is about 15 days during the year that PE classes are displaced because of setup for concerts. And again, that's their classroom. That's a place that they have to use. Sometimes, usually if it's nice out, they can get outside, or they can go to the weight room too, but something that we have to deal with. So, considerations, and you'll see the drawings here in a minute. Looking at the preschool elementary, we are considering a preschool kindergarten facility, would hold sufficient space for 3- and 4-year-old classes in kindergarten, would also have office space. We would have an administrator there in that building. Right now in our current facility, we have a nice room for parent education. That's been great. It's been used a lot at night. We don't know where it will go or where it would go. We're thinking somewhere down on the south part where the old building was, or possibly where we park our vans right now actually is a place that we're thinking, but we didn't want to put it on a drawing yet. You'll see a drawing, but you won't see it located because we aren't quite sure where it's going to be. The junior senior high, we are looking at a new gym. Current gym would continue to be used. One of the questions, I was talking this afternoon actually to the Business and Industry Committee of the Chamber, invited me to talk, and the question was asked, practice gym or game gym? We initially considered a practice gym, thinking again that maybe the cost would be a little bit better. as we looked into it, we realized that there were going to be some fire escape issues if we went with a practice gym. Right now, when you came in tonight, you came up the stairs. Our gym capacity is about, they say it's 1,200. We probably can fit about 1,000 in there if we're packed, really. However, when you're going downstairs, we have 4 doors. The fire marshal sees the stairs and thinks you have 2 doors. So it cuts the amount of people that you can get out in half. So this continuing to be our game gym, along with a practice gym, just makes that issue even worse. Also, the cost between a game gym and a practice gym really isn't that much larger. When you're talking about a gym, you're talking about space and square footage. And so this plan would have about a 1,300 seat gym. It'd be a little larger. Obviously, we always open our facilities for community use, and that would certainly be considered. Locker rooms, concession area, public restrooms, classroom space, strength, fitness, and wrestling, all in one spot in our campus. And we also would be able to lock the area down, so if we have things going on here on the weekends, we would be able to just have it in that area and close the school off, which I think would be a positive thing as well. We also, looking at our career ed, applied tech science, looking at those spaces, part of this, if we move our wrestling room out of where it is, there are connections with doors that would connect our current wood shop with what is now the wrestling room and would be renovated into career and tech ed. We do have a teacher, it's public knowledge, he's not here, he's out scouting tonight, I think. Dave Hicks is retiring. Tony Cantrell is also a teacher that we have in industrial tech. What we're going to do is suspend or hold that position for 1 year. I talked to the board about it Monday night. We're not going to hire someone back for Dave for next year because we want the time to look at our career program and our tech program and really restructure that to align with some of the current Nebraska standards in career ed. We couldn't have done that here in this time. It's February already, and I don't think we would have put a good program together. Also, teachers. There's not a lot of people out there that teach shop work, especially ag. We want to look into and begin an ag program. We want to have FFA. We've talked about it at our board meetings at times. I know community members have asked me and board members, why don't you have ag in Wayne? And this is an opportunity for that. With ag, you need a teacher and a facility. And so those are 2 things that we have to look at when it comes to that. But I really think this is a good opportunity, regardless of whether this project would go forward or not. We are looking at how we're going to restructure this position. So for this 17-18 school year, we will have it up and running, and we'll be moving forward with that. So I know that some people had asked about that. It's just a 1-year hiatus. Mr. Cantrell will teach those classes, and we'll be able to offer everything that we, or most of what we can offer now. Lecture hall. This area is called the lecture hall. It's actually named after Francis Hahn. It's the Hahn. We should probably use that name more. We don't always do that, but the name is after Francis Hahn, who was a superintendent here years ago. We would do some facelift in here, probably better lighting, make it more of a place that we could use for study halls. We do a lot of standardized assessments now. Another location that could be used for that with better lighting and maybe some tables and things. And so also we continue to use it for things like this and staff meetings if we needed to. And then looking at a new performing arts facility with classroom spaces. I mentioned before we would utilize the improvements we had. We do have some stage lighting that's upgraded. The sound system would be something that we would just simply look to move to a new facility, so we would continue to use that. And of course, new performing arts theater would be able to be used by community groups as much as possible, especially in the summer, but also during the school year. I put some enrollment numbers up for you. I didn't have time, and I'm not very good at making charts, so I didn't make a chart. I just put the numbers up. Going back 5 years, in 11-12, we were at 868. 12-13, 865. This is pre-K-12, and we did always serve pre-K students. We just didn't have a facility to do that. but we were serving students that needed those services in preschool. 13-14, we jumped to 887, dropped 1 to 886. This year we're at 910. Next year I'm projecting 930. And the reason of that jump, we have a senior class of great kids, wonderful. There's 51 of them. I wish there was 80 of them because they're wonderful kids, but it's very small for us. Our average size is close to 70. So we graduate 51 kids. We think we'll have an average size kindergarten class, if not a little larger. It's always hard to tell right now, but again, an average class is about 70. And then also our preschool numbers. There are some kids at St. Mary's too that will come over and join our junior high. So we're looking at about 930 kids. So you can see our enrollment definitely is an upward trend, and it's nice because it's not too fast. Okay, I'm going to ask John to come up and talk a little bit about the drawings. And one other thing that, as I was talking about space, I mentioned at the elementary we're at capacity or near. Here we're not. It's a little bit easier to absorb more students at a junior and senior high. I mentioned today, you can have 30 kids. I know the teachers are all going to look at me. You can have 30 kids in a high school English class and do just fine. Try 30 kindergartners. That's not as easy. So we can absorb more students here. Mr. Hanson and I talked today. We think anywhere from an additional 50 to 75 kids is probably what we could absorb with our current staff and with our current facility. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm going to turn it over to John and I'll put the plans up.
Hello.
And they drove in the snow and everything else today, so.
I think Mr. Linehan said, but I'll repeat it. We have done quite a little bit of work on the plans and talking about how the plan works with the existing facility and where things are located and how they work with the existing spaces. But they are concept plans, but they are to scale. And the important thing to us when we're working through the concept phase is that it really confirms that the areas that we talked about for each space, when we put those areas on paper, it confirms that the size of the building is kind of what we expected, and that's really important when we start projecting costs, because that actual area of construction is what we really use to try to project those numbers. And this is the concept plan for the pre-KK building, and you can see that we've got six new classrooms that are 2 for pre-K and 4 for kindergarten. Those are just over about 1,200 square foot each, between 1,200 and 1,300 square foot. And then we would have one of the things that we talk a lot about anymore at all levels of schools is a secure entry. And we addressed that at both the high school and the elementary school when we did the work on these facilities and updated. In this particular case, what happens is those outer doors are open all day, and this is the primary entrance, and it's where everybody has to come, because any other entrances once school starts are locked down. And so people can come into the vestibule so they can get in and out of the weather. But then once they come in, they have to be rung through, in effect. And they have that here at the high school now and at the elementary building if you visited during the day. And in both cases, you can get into the vestibule, so if it's raining or it's snowing or it's just cold, you can get in and out of the weather and then call in, and then once they are comfortable that you're supposed to be there, they know who you are, and then they can let you on through. Well, in this case, we've shown this we refer to this as a gatekeeper situation where once they come in, these doors, again, after school starts in the morning, would be locked. And so the route into the building is to come into the vestibule and then pass through the reception area. So nobody comes into the building without coming through and checking in at reception. We've got an office area here for the administrator with a conference room, workroom, and then an individual instruction space so that a teacher or an aide working with a small group would have a space that they could go. Or they often have people that come in from outside the school that are doing testing or come in for a meeting, and it's a space for that. And then a multi-purpose room that really serves several functions, would be used for lunch, but it would also be used for large muscle development, or it could be used for art projects or a science project or anything like that where they might pull a bigger group of kids together during the day. And then the kitchen would be a serving kitchen, just like the other facilities that the primary kitchen here at the high school serves now. A lot of that meal prep would be done here and then transported, and they do that with a number of locations now, and then just some mechanical space. And this facility was between just short of 17,000 square foot. And then the bigger part of what we're looking at is the work here at the junior senior high school. And I think most of you, the colored area here is the proposed addition. And we haven't changed where the drives are off of the highway. So if you came in this Far West Drive, that's still in the same location. If you were able to park in this area, or right now this drive connects to the rest of the parking, that's in the same location. So I'm guessing that the majority of you came in the west doors, and those existing west doors are right here, right now. And of course, if you came in that way, you know that you come up steps, you're on a landing, and once you come inside, you either have to go up or down. And obviously for, actually you can get into this space from either way. So coming in these west doors. And so when we started talking about the spaces that we're adding and how the facility would work, and looking at the grades, because one of the things that we discovered was that as we extended out to the west, by the time you get out to this location, you're walking out right on grade on that lower level. So there won't be any of that split level effect anymore. You'll come in, you'll be on that lower level, you'll walk right in, we won't have any of the step issues. And that would be true at this new south entrance as well as this new west entrance. The color areas that you see, the tan areas within the existing space, and the line of the existing building, the west side is right here. And then it dips back in to where that west entrance is, and then it jumps back out to go around the existing band room, and that's this space here. We're all sitting in the lecture hall. You either came in these doors or on the upper level, the door that's back over this old vocal music space. The tan areas, we are looking at renovation of the locker rooms, and there has been, as Mr. Linehan mentioned, there has been some work done in there. I actually haven't been back during football season, so I don't know how effective it was. I know when you used to visit during football season, you could walk in that south back door, and the smell would just about knock you over because there was virtually no ventilation in those spaces. And so when we worked on the HVAC system for the gym and for this facility, we also addressed ventilation air moving through those locker rooms. Mr. Linehan mentioned that we actually did look at an alternate to renovate these spaces when we were doing the junior high addition to this building. And it came in, it was really expensive, but we were literally going through that area and completely kind of reconfiguring it for training, for coaches, we were splitting up the locker room spaces for boys and for girls, and we were addressing more area, but it was a much more complex renovation at that time than we would be looking at doing this time, because we are looking at adding new varsity locker rooms just to the west of the new gym out here, and that would take care of training and coaches spaces and some of those things. So the renovation that we're talking about now is it's still virtually in the same area that we have identified here. It's just simpler, upgrading of lockers and finishes and fixtures and that sort of thing. Mr. Linehan mentioned the career ed spaces, and I refer to them as maker spaces. You're making things. We always just called it shop, but they come up with new names all the time. And I know when I was in school, that's where I spent all my time. My mom is still mad at me that when I was a senior, instead of taking the college prep courses I should have taken, I took house building, and I spent most of my day in the shop. And so when I went to school, I spent the first year of school taking classes that I should have taken when I was in high school. She reminds me of that often. In this space where the wrestling room was, we are looking at capturing that space for those areas, for ag, and those career tech education spaces, and moving into that area. In the new spaces, the auditorium, we're looking at, this was a plan for a 520-seat auditorium. The concept with this auditorium is that the stage would be on grade, as opposed to an elevated stage like this, and there is a lift over on the south end of the stage here that you have to go out of this room and around the corner and back into that area. You get up on the stage on a lift. So if you have a handicapped kid that's being called up for an honor or something like that, it's a cumbersome way to get there. And of course, there just in the seating in this space, there just is no accessibility. There's, you can kind of park on that area up the walkway that's between the lower seating and the upper seating, but then you're kind of in a way of sight lines from the back and that sort of thing. So in this case, coming out of the band room on the west side of the building, you would have doors right onto the back of the stage. Mr. Linehan mentioned the depth of this stage. I think we've got right at 27 foot to the back curtain. In this case, from the front of the stage to the back, we're looking at a 40-foot depth. Where in this case, I think we have a 30-foot proscenium opening here from block to block. Where this opens up, we're talking about a 44-foot proscenium opening on the new stage. So one of the issues here is that if the kids are too deep on the stage, you lose them. Depending on where you're sitting you lose that sight line. If you're too far to the side, you lose the sight line on the one side or the other side. And those are things that we were careful to address. And then again, for ADA seating, this path through the middle of the seating is all at floor level. So a kid in a wheelchair, or an adult in a wheelchair, that's where your handicap seating is, and your companion seats and that sort of thing. The new gym. New gym, 94-foot regulation court. You have a long court now, 84 foot's high school. You see most schools, I mean, we're working with D2 schools that are going to 94-foot courts. If you ever move on in state, or if you ever, a lot of the other places that you play anymore, you play on a 94-foot court. We also lengthened the gym just enough so that we could hold district wrestling tournaments. And that's what they want to see, is they want 3 mats side by side, so you can have 3 matches going on at the same time. And we lengthened the gym for that. We're looking at somewhere right in the neighborhood of 1,250 to 1,300 seats, and you can see the doors on the north and the south for exiting. Now, of course, taking up the parking, we need to replace the parking, and so and we actually looked at this when we were looking at this project, and actually drew this up for some grading out here. We just weren't moving the portable buildings that are out there now. But we've got between the parking here and the parking on the west side, we've got 200 new stalls of parking on pavement with lighting and so on, and of course on the south side. And then we have a south entrance on the junior high addition that we did here. This is our dock area that comes up to the kitchen. We have the south really this is the only north-south hallway was the only north-south hallway in the building before we added the junior high edition, but the south door that I know the football players use when they come and go for practice and that sort of thing. And then we'd have a new south activities entrance. And then we're using the corridor around the gym becomes our commons area for halftime, that sort of thing. And we've got a new concession area, new public restrooms to serve this whole kind of activities end of the building, and then our new restroom. And so one of the things that we're able to do is, with this configuration, the way the exiting works, we're able to put doors in that can lock off that whole end of the building. So when you have a big function in your gym now or in your lecture hall, there's really no way for them to close off the building. You know, people can come in, they can really kind of wander through any of this area. And so on a big game night, we'd be able to shut this down. It would contain people really in this hall where you have good visibility. Yeah, we right now, and you go, okay, well, you're saying that the hallway is going to be the commons area. Oh, that's what it is now, and it's we don't have space. Well, right now you've got a 14-foot wide hall, and you're really restricted on the west end by the stairs, and you know, to the east, you run into the office area, and of course the concessions are in that small kind of closet. What we did here was widen this out to 24 foot, and we were literally looking at the area of floor that gave us, and anticipating the numbers of people that we would have out in that area. One of the things that I was really impressed with when I started working here was your solar car program, and we have some openings in that. We have some openings in that west wall of the shops that we'd have to deal with. And I said, hey, let's instead of closing that up, why don't we make that a show place where you could show that off? You get all these people coming in from different communities. Let's put last year's car in there on a stand and do some lighting and show that kind of thing off. And I think that's really true of this south entrance, that could everything from athletics to academics to really make this an area where we can show off what's going on at Wayne, whether it's current artwork or achievements or grade point, lists of kids that have made honor roll, whatever it might be, and really kind of make this a Hall of Fame hall. And then I guess I mentioned the wrestling area. So when this area is unaffected, this parking would stay, and one of the things that it does do for us is it connects us back to, is that 5th Street? Sherman, over on this side. So I do think that it gives you some more alternatives for coming and going, as opposed to just always going back out to the highway. And yes, we'd probably have to have some speed bumps. We paved the parking lot in Cozad this a number of years ago, and I grew up in Cozad. And they put in the light poles, and the poles got delayed in being delivered. But if you know light poles in a parking lot, they're on a concrete base. And so we had these concrete bases that were sticking up about 3 feet. Well, the Canan twins decided they were going to race out of school one day, and one of them didn't get very far, right in the middle of the concrete base. His dad told me I owed him for a pickup, but we got out of that. But on the upper level, you'd have the upper area of the auditorium and the upper area of the gym, and then we would be on. We would come directly off the hall on the upper level at the same level, and that's where we'd be able to separate on the upper level in this location if we had events. And then we've got the fitness center. We're showing about, you've got right at, it's a 40 by 100 building now. We're looking at about 4,500 square foot in this. We just finished a facility for Gross High School that was exactly 4,500 square foot. And then we've got a classroom that we've talked about being the health room and available for PE instruction and that sort of thing. And then we've got, we did show restrooms on this level, but then we're showing an open area that we were thinking about a view into the gym from the upper level. And we did talk about having an elevator on this end, and it really comes into play if we're going to lock off that end of the building for activities, so that we have that accessibility up and down. I think that's it.
And John will be around to answer questions. One other thing I might mention too, I got one of these. I confiscated this from a kid at Battle Creek when I was principal because he was at a presentation. When I was talking, he was shooting at me. So I know Wayne kids wouldn't ever have one of these, but see, I got one too. I just put new batteries in, John. But well, there it goes. I shouldn't have said anything. There are classrooms up here right now. This is a science lab that Mrs. Yankee is in, and this is an art room. That's okay. I'm not going to talk. What we're talking about, at least considering doing, is moving these areas and moving vocal music into that area so that our band and vocal music are together. Now that isn't something it's been talk and not something that we've really looked closely at, but I think it's a very good possibility so they're together. Take me just a second to get where we need to be. One thing before Mr. Spearman talks is I want to just go over the projected costs. And I talked to John about this, and basically these are projected numbers that we are looking at. The pre-KK new construction, about $2.78 million. All of these slides, too, you can access these through our website. Go to online school board meetings, click on today's date, and everything comes up. I'm actually working off those slides. So we're looking at $2.78 million. New construction of the junior senior high, that's all the new construction. $10.6 million. Now that I know that's a large number. If you think about certain spaces and seeing the plans, within all of that is the gym, the performing arts theater, the locker room facilities, the wrestling room, everything all in one number. And so it's not like the gym is, $6 million and the theater's $3 million and then another $1 million for other things. That's the entire number. And so we really have talked a little bit about how that breaks down. And really we're probably looking for the gym somewhere in the $1.7 to $2 million range, and the performing arts theater somewhere more in the $2.7 to $3 million for those spaces. And then you add in those other spaces for new construction. We do have some money in for locker room renovation. With the locker rooms that are connected to our current gym could be renovated. Some shop renovation, we talked about that program. And then also this existing, and those numbers are certainly numbers that we're starting with. So it doesn't mean they're etched in stone necessarily, especially those renovations. There's a lot of concrete involved, and so site paving and replacement parking. So there's your total construction estimates along with contingency allowances and project expenses. On the bottom, I did want to point this out. We did look at our additional expenses. We would not have to add a teacher to this for this program. We have sufficient teaching staff for all of that. We would need someone to clean the building. So right now our maintenance staff is full and busy, and there wouldn't be, I don't think, time for that. And then also thinking about utilities. However, remember, we are paying lease payments for the preschool building. So in a new facility, we would not have to make those lease payments. And actually, as we studied the utility costs with the lease payments, they're pretty close when you put the numbers together. And they're estimated numbers, so I don't want to say for sure, but I think the additional cost would be about $75,000 for maintenance and utilities. So that is the projected cost. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Spearman, and I will put his slides up.
Thank you. With the total project scope of 18 million, and when you add in costs associated with issuing the bonds, we're talking about a bond sizing of 18,260,000. Please keep in mind this obviously requires voter approval. If you look on the left-hand side, we're looking at the 2015 refunding bonds. Those were actually issued in 2002 for a project at the school district. The school district has actually refinanced those 3 times. Most recently, we did those roughly about a year ago for total savings to the taxpayers of $375,000. Now, as you look under kind of down the center column, the $18 million project, keep in mind that's $18,260,000 in bonds, as well as the interest expense. You can see that the district is currently levying somewhere between 4.5 and 5 cents for the bonds that are outstanding. Under the center column or the D column for the new project scope, you can see while we still have bonds outstanding for the 2002 project, the principal and interest on the bonds isn't quite what it is down in 2025 on out. For the simple fact that we want to keep the bonds, when we put the principal and interest together, we have just one level levy. Also keep in mind when you're looking at the levy numbers, that's based on the taxable valuation of 2015, which is $912 million. And so as time goes on, everybody knows valuations increase, and so as the valuation goes up, the levy's going to go down, but what we're asking for is virtually the same. So what we're looking at on an average interest rate of 3.75%, we'd be looking at, with a project scope of 18 million, we'd be looking at increasing the general or the bond levy by 12.3 cents. We add in the levy for the 2015 refunding bonds, and you can see in the far right-hand corner, we're right around 16.75 cents. Keep in mind that's based on an average interest rate of 3.75%. The next sheet, sheet 2, it's exactly the same information, but an average interest rate of 3.5%. You can see how that affects the levy. We're now below 12 cents, and then a total general obligation bond levy of 16.3 cents. Sheet 3, we're at an average interest rate of 3.25%, and you can see now we're right around 11.5 cent increase in a total general obligation bond levy of 16 cents. Sheet 4 shows an average interest rate of 3%. 3% is somewhere where we'd be at if we were in the market today, given the district's credit history with the rating agencies. The reason I wanted to show you kind of an array of different interest rates is because if the board decides to move forward, the earliest they could actually vote on the bonds would be this May. By the time we actually come back around to issue those bonds, sometime in July. And so you really don't lock in the interest rate until the board adopts the resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds. Now, if you can scroll down just a little bit, Mr. Lanahan. Under the bottom of column D, which is just the new project funding, you can see for an $18,260,000 project with principal and interest, we're at $25,362,000, and keep in mind that's for 3%. If you go to sheet 1, at 3.75%, we're at $27,317,000. So roughly a $2 million difference between an average interest rate of 3.75 and 3%. So there is a significant difference in interest rates, even though it doesn't sound like 0.75% is that much. But over a 20-year period on an $18 million project, it is significant. And if we move on to, is it sheet 6? So a lot of people have heard Mr. Lanahan talk about 12 cents. So when you hear him talk about that, keep in mind that's a conservative number. That's a number based on an average interest rate of about 3.6%, which is 0.6% higher than if we were in the actual market today. But based on a levy increase of 12 cents, for every $100,000 of taxable valuation, you're looking at $120 of additional taxes for 20 years. obviously $250,000 is $300, $500,000 taxable valuation is $600, and then I took it all the way out to a $10 million taxable valuation equals a $12,000 increase in taxes. I did receive from Wayne County the average, keep in mind this is average, I didn't realize how detailed they get into valuing ag land because it's based on soil type. But the average 2015 taxable valuation for an average irrigated acre is $5,700. 12 cents on that is roughly $6.86 per acre. And then your average grass value is about $1,800 or $2.24 per acre. Sheet 5. Mr. Lanahan talked about the limited tax bonds that the district issued, or the Build America bonds that the district issued back in 2010 for the middle school addition, as well as some other projects in the high school and
Junior high addition
in the elementary facility. When the district originally issued those bonds, they had a final maturity of 2040. The district recently, within the last 4 months, refinanced these bonds, and we cut off 15 years, and our final maturity is now 2025. By lowering the interest rate as well as shortening the repayment period, the board is saving $1,526,000. Keep in mind that when the district refinances bonds, that's a savings to the taxpayers, because any monies levied for bonds can only be used for bond repayment. And so when the district refinances, it's obviously a benefit to the taxpayer.
Just quick, I put up, this is the current levy rate, this is what we're operating under this year. We did have a $1.7 million reduction in our state aid, and so our general fund jumped from 86 cents to about 98 this year to compensate for that. We've kept our expenses flat, and we are currently on track to do that. In other words, the amount of dollars that we spent in the 14-15 year is going to be the same, assumed barring no major issues as far as costs when it comes to facilities. You hope that doesn't happen, but basically when you consider health insurance and salaries and things that have gone up, we've kept our expenses flat, and we did that because we didn't want to raise the levy any higher than we had to. So our total levy this year is $1.96. And looking at the bonds that Jay talked about, it would raise them to $1.215. And again, that increase, that's kind of a worst case scenario, and that increase would be basically 12 cents, 11.9 cents. And so again, it's dependent on interest rates and so forth. So just a quick, I wanted to show you that so you kind of knew where we were at as far as our levy, and we're not done. We're going to take just a quick recess because we need to move a table out and reconfigure the stage. As Dr. Linster mentioned, if you'd like to speak to the board, there is a sheet. We would like you to sign the sheet. Just talk right into the microphone, and we would like you to come here and address the board, and that way you won't have people behind you kind of be able to see both ways.